Hello and welcome. My name is Vladislav Novikov. My guest today is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and local elected official in the state of Wisconsin. Yuri, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for inviting me. Mentioning being an elected official in this great state of Wisconsin seems like it's never been more relevant to the news than now. So thank you for inviting.
Yeah, it's true. So, Yuri, is Trump talking us closer to World War III or even a nuclear war? The US hit 3 military targets in Iran. Now, Iran's military says the US has entered the war and should expect serious consequences. What kind of consequences are they talking about?
It's hard to truly understand, or it's impossible to predict what Trump administration is going to do, and this air of uncertainty is certainly very dangerous. Yes, it is dangerous for our enemies, but it is also it's difficult for Americans because I think Americans at this point are finding ourselves in the world where our president decided to make this very strong and powerful decision without consulting either with the United Nations or with Congress. And now that made every American anywhere in the world a potential target for Iran. And, it's hard enough being an elected official in Wisconsin when we had a maniac who was on the hunt for elected officials in neighboring state of Minnesota. And he killed the state legislator before he was arrested. So we're certainly sitting in a powder keg ourselves here in the United States. But when we speak of World War III, well, it depends on when you begin the count. Because if you begin the count with invasion of, it's one of those Russian invasions. Either it's invasion of Ukraine, but it could be also earlier invasion, the full scale or annexation of Crimea, or perhaps the invasion of Georgia. There's any number of points at which we can consider to be a beginning of World War III, because gradually we see more and more countries are taking part in this war that is consuming more and more countries, because really we see the threat ultimately comes out of Kremlin. When Kremlin is not able to sustain its violent ambitions, there's as close to world peace as we can get. But somehow that seems to be that's a thought that is a little too plain out of too many people's reaches quite yet. So we still are dealing with each crisis separately without understanding that the root of all evil clearly is financed and operated from Moscow. But nonetheless, I think that World War III, it takes two to tango, as President Trump has said more than once under various set of circumstances that don't fit the expression. Is that the United States showed amazing resolve in bombing Iran, but it will also need to show equal resolve to stick to supporting Israel on an ongoing, continuous basis at the level at which Prime Minister Netanyahu feels is appropriate for Israel, because this is not necessarily the security of the state of Israel we're talking about as much as also the safety and security of the Netanyahu government, which, as we don't know exactly what was the reason for the attack at this moment, and the best we can surmise is that Netanyahu is in a difficult political situation, and he chose this time to attack Iran, which was on the verge of going nuclear for a long, long time, and there appears to be no new intelligence saying that there had been any closer to it now. And in fact, apparently, according to Secretary of State Rubio, it's not even a relevant question to ask those kinds of questions about what new information do you have that allows you to make those kinds of decisions. In order to fight World War III, you got to have two sides, right? or at least two sides, and you got to have a willingness to fight. And it's unclear who is where, because we seem to have really strong men such as Putin, Xi Jinping, Kim Chen-in, Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, and then we also have wannabe strongman, which is Donald Trump, who is on one hand fighting Iran because he's got a very powerful influence from Netanyahu in a lobby. But at the same time, he just has Trump wanted to be peace president, even though he's now a war president. He wishes he could be a peace president, and that means wrapping things up. So that means one way not to fight, and that's what he suggested for Ukraine with his strange 24-hour remark, is that Donald Trump can surrender and leave very quickly. He has no attachment issues. So if he has to drop Ukraine or drop Israel, he will do it very fast. And I think that's the big danger of operating with Donald Trump. There's no moral spine, there's no principles. It's all about money, and that makes him very, very unpredictable ally. And to think that this is going to be a country that's going to start World War III, possibly with some irresponsible behavior, which what we, in a way, appears to have seen with Iran. Now, it's quite possible that this has been successful, and it is something to hope for, because in the situation that we are in, I certainly hope that Trump's operation was a success, and that and that heroic American pilots were able, and intelligence were able to nail exactly what Iran had, and Iran has nothing. Now what? I think that this is where Americans look at 2003, an invasion of Iraq, and are not filled with optimism or confidence or even hope, because the conversation that I was present at with my American friends was about draft. Because that's what people start to think about when they hear about the United States bombing Iran. Because we don't think that this is going to be a swift operation, because our experience tells us it hasn't been in the past. But we've never had a war president like Donald Trump. And this is not a president of a protracted war. I just don't see him having that level of commitment to anything.
Let's talk about protests. There are protests in the US against the strike. According to NBC, people in New York and other cities are holding signs saying, "Stop the war in Iran," and Trump is a war criminal.
I think that that is a fantastic opportunity for the far left and the far right to unite, because neither one wants to see United States engaged anywhere in the world militarily. And I think it's time to admit that far left and far right are not that far apart. At least on some issues, they're together. And it's a view that is, I believe, is legitimate, in a sense that every country can have people in its country who don't want to fight with anybody else. That's okay. But I believe that this attitude has been promoted and paid for and propagated by Russian propaganda to a large extent, because this is the point of view that Russian propaganda always maintained, and that's why Tucker Carlson goes and interviews Putin, because both of them are saying that United States being involved anywhere in the world is a bad thing. And I think if one finds themselves agreeing with Vladimir Putin and with Tucker Carlson, they should think that maybe there's something wrong with their point of view. Agreeing with those two people, it's not a good sign. And this has been very interesting to watch between, as there was a debate about whether to bomb Iran or not between Senator Ted Cruz, and Tucker Carlson, in which Senator Ted Cruz was representing the state of Israel, or AIPAC, which he insists is not connected to Israeli government. And still, Senator Cruz is the strongest supporter of Israel, while Tucker Carlson was opposed to bombing Iran, opposed to us being involved in anything, explaining that winning in the Cold War really hasn't been all that good for us Americans, because considering what happened to our country, blah, blah, blah. So on that level, the protests against war are going to be happening, and they are happening, and they should be happening. This is a free country. People should have right to express themselves. And those are consequences that this president always invites, yet doesn't think about. because when you're going to have a strong, you're going to have a splintering of your own coalition. And Trump said that he determines what America first is, and maybe he does. But I think that there could be still a lot of people on American right and American left who are not happy with this. Will this lead to an impeachment or the impeachment, the one that will take Trump down? Doubtful. But at the same time, it also depends on the response that we're going to see from Iran. If we're going to see zero response because we crushed them right now, and now Iran is going to be planning long-term how to get back at the evil United States, and this is just the beginning, the seed of the next 9/11, then that's one scenario. But if Iran starts to shoot rockets, God forbid, successfully at different targets that they could, then the protests could grow and calls for impeachment could grow. But at the same time, we could find ourselves in the middle of a war. And there's already resolution and desire in the Senate. So protests, yes, but mainstream Democrats are actually asking right now for a resolution to vote on declaring war on Iran because they feel like this is their constitutional obligation. They would like to have a vote. That's what politicians do. They want to vote on this. And so that's what, so there's a lot of dynamics that are developing right now very quickly because this is a process that we just stepped into. We weren't discussing this for months and months and months. This is something that arose in a matter of days, if not weeks. And all of a sudden, here we are. And this peace president is now being a war president, and therefore protests are flaring up. And those are all just consequences of elections.
Mm-hmm. Almost 10 years ago, the US and other big countries made a nuclear deal with Iran. It was called the JCPOA. The goal was to stop Iran from building nuclear weapon and avoid a war like this. But Trump broke the deal, and that changed everything.
Well, what can I say? Yes, it has, and now we're in a situation where that's just a common part of Trump pattern, where he destroys the deal that was made before him because he wants to have his own deal, even if it looks practically the same as the old deal, but it's his deal. And we saw that with North American free trade agreement between Canada, United States, and Mexico that was rewritten under the first Trump. And then the second Trump said, who signed this terrible deal? Because he doesn't even care if it's his own old deal. He wants to have his own new deal. It's this kind of a perversion of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who offered Americans the New Deal. Trump always wants the New Deal. He wants the next deal. He wants to make this next agreement, even if it looks exactly like the same one. But there's consequences and costs to doing those kinds of things too, because when you exit the agreements, the other side also has a voice. And this is what General Mattis said, that our enemies, we may decide that they don't have a voice, but they do. And so how they're going to respond to this? Yes, Iran is a threat. Iran is danger, and Iran nuclear program should not exist. And I think that everyone agrees with that, and Democrats and Republicans. And that people of Iran deserve a chance to have a free country where they can choose their leaders, and their leaders will respect their laws and will respect their society, and we'll have a good country. I mean, I think all people deserve to be free. So I think freedom to all people. I think those are all good things. But with this president, we're just looking at people being pawns to his desires. And by the way, that Nobel Prize that he wanted may be a little bit harder to get now than before. But perhaps there's another Nobel Prize that he could get. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump really cares for what he gets or who nominates him or anything. I think he's just looking for a list of trophies on his wall. He could put Nobel Prize and then go for Oscar, then maybe an Emmy. He's the greatest of all times.
Mm-hmm. Now we heard that U.S. B-2 stealth bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. They are flying to Diego Garcia, a key U.S. base in the Indian Ocean. Is America really getting ready for a big war?
I think that's one thing that Americans are very much afraid of. is that we seem to have a hard time of not getting sucked into wars because that's how wars tend to work. And those people that remember those basic history lessons seem to be very concerned about this situation because they don't want their country, their children, their futures affected by war, because war is destruction. And I don't have to explain to anybody in Ukraine how terrible war is. So people in the United States are concerned about this, and they have no trust in their president, who will that he will. I mean, even the whole attack on Iran, the first major bombing that we are discussing, because who knows what door we have to hell we have now opened. That there was a mislead there. There was a ruse because there was a misdirection, a lie, obfuscation, all those things that Donald Trump operates in. And yet we should acknowledge that he was the main operational challenge for the military planners, who on one hand have to relay all the information to the president of the United States as the chief commander, but at the same time, he then sits on Twitter or Truth Social and writes whatever he wants to, however he decides to interpret this information, and whatever he considers to be secret or not secret. And so when he announced that this is going to be 2 weeks, he knew that this was just a ruse. But that's the kind of ruse that Donald Trump likes to comfortable feels playing. So I think that this makes things like having agreements with this country very difficult, because not only Putin is not following his agreements, but Trump also is not following agreements, things that he says openly and covertly. And I think that puts United States in a very difficult and unpredictable situation. Does that mean war? More than likely, because we have a very temperamental president who has very high opinion of himself and his ability to solve problems, and wars don't work like that. I think that we are yet to see what Iran is going to do, and I think that that answer, especially considering that Russia is more than happy to have the United States be sucked into another long war in the region that will raise oil prices, that will make Russia feel more secure about attacking Ukraine, because everyone is going to pay attention to Iran and the United States. How is this bad for Putin? Yes, he's not going to get Iranian drones. So in short term, this certainly has some minuses, and it does distract Putin from dealing with Ukraine full time, I suppose, to having to deal also with Iran, who he promised some support. But thanks to Ukraine and heroic Ukrainian fighters, that Iran has not been able to benefit from the Russian military machine as much as they would like, because that Russian military machine has been destroyed in Ukraine. And that allowed Israel to fly their mission so successfully to and from Iran and to dominate skies over Iran, because Iran is sitting there with their butt naked because Russia spent all of its military in Ukraine. So all of those things having consequences, lead us to actions that, may seem unavoidable, and yet were launched into place by specific actions. This is almost World War I kind of a scenario, where there was a murder of Franz Ferdinand, and then all of a sudden one thing leads to another, and then there's a big war that was never before. It's called a world war, and now we could be, what some could even say, this is a continuation, perhaps the final ending of World War II, where Russia didn't so much defeat fascism as kind of took over fascism, and now is looking to replay and refight that and finish what Hitler started. I think it's just important for us to keep all of those factors in mind, and remember that United States plays an incredibly powerful and important role in this world. And if we choose to abdicate it by saying that we are better off not being involved and protecting our borders and our men and women, then we're going to have this danger. It will come to us because it has come to us. Because when we have Russian money influencing our elections, and then we see that head of HR in the White House is somebody who is unclear where he was born, possibly Soviet Union, and his parents' past is entirely unclear. So they could be like real sleeper agents, and this is the man in charge of HR at the White House. We can't ignore dangers that are happening outside of our country. They are already, the danger is inside the house.
Mhm. And one more thing, after the strikes, Trump started talking about changing the regime in Iran. He said maybe it's not politically correct to say regime change, but if Iran's leaders can't make Iran great again, and then maybe they should go, MIGA. This situation is not easy. So what's the real goal here? Is the US trying to stop Iran's nuclear program or remove its government?
I think that it has been determined by prevailing number of experts is that it may not be the goal, but it would be a very enjoyable consequence of these actions. Because when the United States is doing everything to destroy government institutions, from state TV to ministries of defense and on and on and on in Iran, well, not United States, excuse me, Israel. The United States is just there to destroy the crown piece that may or may not have been destroyed. We're seeing that, well, if Donald Trump was president of Iran, this would have never happened. And he would have probably made peace within anybody within 24 hours, because that's what Donald Trump does. He makes deals or surrenders or runs away. Very, quick amount of time is not, long time is not needed. Because again, there's no attachment issues. It's really interesting to see that Donald Trump is willing to walk away from anything, including, burying his ex-wife at a golf course. That shows to me that he moved on. And I think that in this situation, seeing practically civil war among MAGA, the Trump's witnesses there, that they wanted him to be a peace president. Now he's a war president. Those kinds of dynamics that we already discussed are very damaging to Trump politically, and they're very damaging to MAGA politically, because it really splinters the party. Because you have J.D. Vance and several others, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, who are so interested in being the isolationists. Really, let's not do anything to hurt Russia's chances of taking over the world. But at the same time, you have some in government that are interested in trying to show that we do have our military for a purpose, for a reason, that it's supposed to do something to keep the world safer, although it'd be nice if it was in some kind of a rule-based, predictable manner. Instead of saying vice president, we're not going to do regime change, and then president saying, then why not? By the way, who's going to have negotiations with us after this? I think that having negotiations with a country like this that can change its opinion between vice president and president on whether you're killing the president of the other country or not a very reliable negotiation partner either. So I think that this inconsistency, again, it shows tactical advantages, because you don't know what Trump is going to do, except that he's not going to bomb Kremlin. Everything else, Trump is willing to consider. But at the same time, it's very unpredictable long term. Long term, this is extremely damaging policy. We see how this is damaging for our economy, because people are not able to plan things going forward. There's hiring freezes. There's just all sorts of issues that are connected to lack of stability. And now we see this on an international level, and not just politically, but militarily. Consequences of this are truly impossible to predict.
Mm-hmm. And today Russia also hit Ukraine again. Civilian died. and it happened just before the third round of peace talks. But it feels like Trump doesn't care anymore about what's going on here. Does he? Because they don't text like before, Vladimir, stop, or something like this. And I think Putin read it like, Vladimir, come on.
I think it is high time for Ukraine to stop thinking that Donald Trump is going to lose faith in Vladimir Putin. I think this is really just looking at things backwards. I've been answering this question for many months, and it seems like it's about time to maybe come up with a different question. And I don't mean just you. I mean, like a lot of people that are asking me this, like, is this the point where Donald Trump will finally cross the red thresh line, whatever, and then we'll see Vladimir Putin for who he really is? No. No, in fact, if anything, we are seeing the end of even discussion, a significant discussion about Ukraine, because, of course, with what's happening right now, we need all the resources we need ourselves. What, Ukraine? Are you joking? We could have attacked from Iran, maybe on American bases, God forbid, on where else. We can't be thinking about, what is this, Ukraine, you call it? I don't know. But Vladimir Putin is a very useful resource for this administration, because he offered to be, a mediator in negotiations. So this is all sorts of legitimization or Putin being legitimized. That is not helping Ukraine's cause. But the plus side here is that it seems pretty obvious and pretty clear that restrictions are off. This is not really a rules-based order anymore. And while it is important to acknowledge the tragedy and suffering of the Ukrainian people, they no longer appear to be justification for military aid or any aid from the United States. The United States now, under this administration, not United States as a country, but United States administration, and is really just respect strength. So when you had Operation Spiderweb that was so successful in destroying a large part of American strategic aviation, Russian strategic aviation, good thing to catch myself, in the moment, is that it showed Trump strength, and he respects strength. Even then he catches himself and says, oh, this is bad for my relationship with Putin. And he says, no, this is going just to, now Putin is going to be hitting back, or it's going to be terrible. But inside he goes, wow, that was really cool. So I think that those kind of really cool moments is what Ukraine should be concentrating on, because if Putin is mortally wounded, Trump won't stand by him. Trump will desert him like he will desert anybody when they show weakness.
Yuri, thank you so much for joining us. It was a real pleasure to see you again and hear your perspective. We truly appreciate your insight and analysis.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine.